Hey everyone, and welcome to video number 3 in our series, 6 Keys to the Pass List, how to move from failure to success. And we're so glad to have you with us today. My name is Jackson Mumey, and I am the founder of Celebration Bar Review. For over 30 years, I've helped people to pass their bar exams, to move from failure to success. Over that period of time, I've worked with people who are just like you, coming from all around the world in all walks of life and all circumstances, and showing them how to get from the fail list to the pass list. And that's what this video series is all about. We're looking at the steps that you have to take. Now, the source material for this series comes from a study that was recently done by the Access Lex Institute for the New York bar examiners. It was a study of first and second time bar candidates, and it was prepared to cover a period from July 2016 through February of 2018. The study was both statistical and it included focus groups and questionnaires. And it was just a wealth of information about what makes a difference for people, why first-time takers who don't pass become successful, and that's what we wanted to look at together in this series. What we've discovered so far is that there are 6 reasons for failure, and we've looked already at a couple of them: not having enough study, having poor quality of study, and today we're going to look at the third reason, which is wasted study time. In other words, just not managing your time effectively on the exam itself. In addition to that, we have 3 other reasons for failure, and we'll be looking at those in more depth in upcoming videos. Along with those reasons to failure, obviously, we've got some keys to getting onto the pass list. And so we've looked at increased time and quality of time, but today we're going to look at the concept of time management, specifically on the exam itself, not just so much in study, but literally on the test itself. And how do you get prepared to take the test properly and use your time wisely there? And then in future videos, we'll look at, again, 3 more keys to our pass list, giving us a total of 6. In each of these videos, as I said, we're focusing on one of the 6 keys, and you can see that we're in video number 3 of the 6. So if you haven't watched video 1 and video 2, I encourage you to follow the links here and check those out. And then once you've gotten through all 3 of those videos, go ahead and check out videos 4, 5, and 6 as we produce those. Let's take a look now at key number 3 according to the study, which was time management during the exam. And this is a big concern for bar takers, no doubt about it. One of the problems that we recognize is that when you don't finish the exam, it is going to have an impact on your success. But now we're able to quantify that a little bit more. What the study found was that 12% of first-time takers who did not finish the complete exam, whether that was multi-state bar exam or the essays, the MEE, or the performance test, had a 12% lower pass rate than those that got through the entire test. The study also discovered that for second-time bar takers who didn't complete all sections of the exam, they had a 19% lower pass rate than those second-time takers who were able to complete all of the sections of the exam. So 12 to 19% is a pretty big drop to be faced with, and so it's something that you want to be aware of. If you're thinking that completing the exam doesn't make a difference, here's the statistical proof. There's a 12 to 19% drop in pass rates if you don't get through all parts of the exam. So when students say to me, I didn't finish all of the questions on the multi-state, so I Christmas treed the last 5, I'm already deducting points from their possibility of passing. Or likewise, if they say, I didn't really finish 1 or 2 of the essays, or I couldn't get all the way through a performance test, we now know that there's a negative result that comes with that. In addition to all of that, we know that poor time management on the exam has a substantial influence on what happens in the exam and in your results. And in the focus groups that were done, they talked to students about what it meant for them to have poor time management on the exam. This was representative of a lot of the statements regarding the multi-state bar exam. A student said, I probably left 15 to 20 questions blank. I had to scribble in as much as I could at the end, and it was a bust. That is an absolute. And if you're not completing all of the questions on the multi-state, you're going to be in real trouble. I'm going to show you how you can do that in a moment, but I think it's important to understand that that's the first problem on the multi-state. But it's also a problem on the essays, whether it's the multi-state essay exam or if it's essays in other states that are longer. One student wrote, I hit 1 or 2 essays and then I found myself with no time. I only got through a couple and that was it. No kidding. If you're not getting through all the essays, you're not going to pass the exam. And so practicing and being prepared for proper time management on the essays is absolutely critical. And then on the performance test, this is really a challenge for people, particularly in the online exams that were given in 2020 and 2021. One student wrote, "I struggled with the timing on the MPT. I've done memos and I've drafted legal papers, but never in such a short time limit. And because of those time limits, if you don't get through the entire performance test, there's just no way that you're going to be successful on that part of the exam. And because of its grading and its importance in the grading, you simply can't afford to give up those points." So, does poor time management make a difference? Absolutely it does. When we quantify the failure to complete the multi-state specifically, the study found some interesting numbers just on those people that couldn't get through the multi-state bar exam, the multiple choice. What they found was that for first-time bar takers, if you failed to complete the MBE, it reduced the probability of pass rates by 8%. So that's a pretty big jump for first-time takers. But the damage to second-time bar takers was much greater. If you failed to complete all of the 200 questions on the MBE, if you're a second-time or a repeat bar taker, it reduced your chances of passage by 20%. That is a huge number. And so there's no question but what you have to get through all of the MBE. And then what they found as well is that for those applicants who completed the exam, there was a 40% probability of passage as a second-time taker. So there's a huge swing between not completing the exam and completing the exam. And for those of you who think that it's not a big deal or it doesn't matter, these numbers should absolutely make you sit up and take notice. What causes timing problems on the multi-state specifically? The report identified, and we would agree, with 4 basic problems that occur when it comes to preparing for the multi-state. The first is that applicants overread. They take too long trying to read each question and then trying to spot all the issues, when in fact the call of the question is usually very narrow and very specific. This idea of taking too long to read is truly problematic. We believe, and we teach in our course, that you can read and answer a multi-state question in 90 seconds, start to finish. And that's what our data points have told us consistently. Once someone gets over 90 seconds in time on a question, their probability of getting the answer correct drops dramatically. And so, overreading is the first problem. The second problem that the study identified was that students rely too much on memorization. They rely on memory recall of legal elements, and then under the pressure of the exam, they tense up, they tighten up, and they can't remember it. So all that effort you put into flashcards and mnemonics and cramming doesn't pay you much value on the multi-state itself, and the memorization becomes problematic. The solution to that is to not try to answer based on your memory, but to answer based on a deeper knowledge, which comes from repetition and learning through repetition rather than learning through memorization, as we've talked about elsewhere. The third problem that came up was having to do with the quality of the practice questions. A lot of applicants and a lot of respondents in the surveys said that the questions they got from their big box bar review were either too easy or too hard, and they didn't reflect the actual test. It's important to understand that not all of the big box companies use actual bar exam questions. In fact, most of them don't. They make up their own questions because of the cost of licensing. The result of that is that you get questions that are much too easy in many cases. And then you have multi-state supplement companies that, in order to justify their existence, have questions that are too hard and, again, don't reflect the actual test. And because of that, the survey found that the quality of practice questions created timing problems when people got into the actual exam. We use license questions, by the way, and they're the real thing, and it makes a difference. And then finally, what the study found was that test format made a difference. People who had practiced taking a multi-state exam using a Scantron bubble sheet and then found themselves in an online format had some difficulties making the transition. As the bar exam switches back and forth between online and in-person exams, I think people will get better at making this adjustment. But if you practice in a paper and pencil form and then have to take the exam online, or vice versa, you're going to have a problem with timing. That's what the study found, and we agree. So in our course, we provide those questions in both formats. So regardless of how you're taking the test, you can practice in the same way. So those are some of the problems we see on the multi-state with regard to timing. And we think that they're all manageable and can be solved by having a strong and successful course that's designed to focus on these particular 4 problems. What about the failure to complete essays? How significant is that? Interestingly enough, the study found it was not as dramatic an impact as failing to complete the multi-state. In fact, it changed the probability of bar passage rate by only 4%. Now, 4% is still 4%, but it's not as significant as I think a lot of people anticipated that it would be. In fact, what they discovered was that there were other factors that were more important. But let's look at essay timing problems as well to see what the study and report found. Again, there were 4 problems that the writers of the study identified. The first was that applicants do too much issue spotting. They take too long to read each question, they try to spot issues in the question, and they end up writing too many words that just don't really matter. This idea of issue spotting becomes really problematic because our experience has been that you can write a successful 30-minute essay that's about 750 typed words. If you're writing in issue spotting, you probably need double that number because so much of what you're writing just really doesn't matter to the examiners. And so issue spotting is the primary culprit for essay timing problems. The second problem, again, just like the multi-state bar exam, is memorization. Applicants that rely on memory recall of legal elements when combined with issue spotting end up writing about things that are not really critical to the problem, and they spend a great deal of time and energy trying to construct all of that and putting those words on the paper and remembering them. Again, it's not a successful methodology, it's not rewarded by the bar examiners, and it creates timing problems because very frequently people can't get through all of the essays on the exam. The third problem, again, was the quality of the practice. Questions that were essay problems that were too easy or too hard, not reflective of the actual test. Again, you should be using licensed essay questions from the exam. So if that's the UBE, you're taking the multi-state essay exam. If you're in Florida or California or Georgia, you should be using actual licensed and practice questions from those tests. And that is what we offer to our students in all of those jurisdictions. And then finally, the test format. This is a huge issue in 2020 and 2021, to be sure, where we went from in-person exams to online exams, and the ability to write an essay online for some people was very different, seeing the question in a digital format rather than in paper and pencil. It's always been the case for the last 10 years or so that you write your answer on a computer and submit it even if you're sitting in an in-person room. So it's not so much the writing of the answer on a computer, it's more the way the question is being given to you. And what the study found was that this online versus in-person dichotomy was creating timing problems for some applicants. So again, the goal here is to be able to solve all of those problems when it comes to essay writing. And we start by going away from issue spotting and IRAC writing, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. We don't rely on memorization. We give you the actual essays so that you can see what the examiners have been testing and the way they write the problem. And we provide the questions to you in both online and written format. So depending on your test, you're in the right format. What's the influence of poor time management then, to sum up? If we talk about the people that ran out of time on the multi-state, it caused an 8% difference in their probability of passage. And for people that ran out of time just on the essays, it created a 4% difference. So 4 to 8% difference. And I think that ultimately that's pretty significant. So again, if you've been thinking that your ability to finish all the essays or to finish all the multi-state didn't really matter, I think now you've got some reasons to rethink that position. So one of the other interesting findings of the study, one that I think will surprise a lot of people, is this question of value in completing a simulated exam. Most bar reviews have full-length simulated exams at various points in their course, and it's been a given in our industry for many years that the more simulated exams you did, the better off you'd be. And what the study found is that most applicants took at least one simulated bar exam as they were preparing. In fact, 91% of all first-time takers did a simulated exam, and 80% of second-time takers did at least one exam. And that seems to be good news, and I think we would all agree that's helpful to have that experience. But here's the surprise. The number of actual simulated exams that a student took was not actually a factor in bar passage. In other words, taking 2, 3, 4, or more simulated exams did not impact the bar passage rate at all. So if you've been thinking that you need to really go fast so that you can do a lot of simulated exams at the end of your study, well, here's a surprise. You really don't need to do that. Now, it looks like you need to take at least one, but there's no real value empirically in taking a second, a third, or a fourth, or even more. And I think that summary, that finding will surprise a lot of people. But I think what happens is that once you understand the concept, doing more simulated exams probably has an offsetting negative in terms of just wearing you out, so that when you get to the exam, you're literally just beat up and tired. And I think that's important to keep in mind. When we think about the factors in time practice, one of the things that this study found was that the traditional standardized, but what I call the big box courses, just don't work very well when it comes to time practice. In fact, one student wrote in the study, commercial bar prep was just worlds away from the real thing. And here's why I think that's true. First of all, it tends to ignore time limits. Students just practice on their own, and they take as much time as they want in multi-state or performance tests or essays, and because they've ignored the time limits, they really don't know what to do when they get into the exam itself. Another problem, as we've already mentioned, is that these standardized big box courses don't use representative questions, whether they're essays, performance tests, or multi-state questions, and therefore your practice is just not correct. It's not authentic. It's what I describe as a dinosaur. The third thing that was huge as a factor was the lack of feedback. Students in standardized courses consistently talked about the lack of feedback that they got, the lack of assistance, the lack of any kind of model or sample answers or even instruction that would help give them the feedback that they needed on the work that they did. A fourth question or problem was the question of issue spotting. There was too much of a focus on issue spotting, which caused people to overwrite, spend too much time, and whether they were writing an essay or they were trying to answer a multi-state question, as we saw, and that focus was problematic. And then finally, there was a lack of performance test practice. Most of the standard bar review courses do very little with performance tests. They give very little instruction. There's almost no actual approach that's helpful and is built into the course. And so this lack of MPT practice means that the applicants really don't know if they're on track or not on track in the work that they're doing. So these are the failures in traditional courses. These are the things that the study and that students identified as being problems. How do you resolve that? I think that you look for an alternative to that approach, as we've talked about elsewhere. As one student said, I wish I'd known about your course at Celebration Bar Review the first time I took the exam. It made everything different. And here are some of the differences. One of the things that we do is that we offer time practice. In other words, in our view, you need to have the opportunity to time your work, and so we give you time limits for every stage of the study that you do. Along with that, we use licensed actual questions. In other words, we want you to use the actual bar exam questions, whether they're essays, performance tests, or the MBE itself. Nothing replaces the real thing. The third thing that we offer is personal and group coaching. In order to give you the feedback that you need, we offer levels of personal coaching and mentoring so that you can work one-on-one with a tutor to help you learn how to write your essays and performance tests. But we also offer group coaching and the opportunity through a private Facebook group to get your questions asked and to get answers to them. We also focus on realistic legal writing. Our goal is to help you understand how to write in a way that the bar examiners will reward, and that's not issue spotting. It's really based on an approach that takes the disputes in a problem and works through those and shows how the law would be applied. So very different in the approach to writing, and as I said, that gets you a much shorter answer that gets a higher score. And when it comes to MPT practice, we've got loads of performance tests, actual performance tests in every jurisdiction for the UBE and for California and Georgia. And so these performance tests come with workshops, practice, the opportunity for feedback, and model and sample answers. So in other words, there are approaches and alternatives that really work when it comes to thinking about timed practice on the bar exam itself. I hope that's helpful to you, and if you've found value in this, I want to suggest that there are a couple of next steps that you can take. The first is to visit us at celebrationbarreview.com. Find out, we've got lots of information about the way our bar review courses can help you move from failure to passing to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. And while you're on our site, we invite you to request a free book. It's called How to Study for the Bar Exam. It's filled with plenty of practical tips and information that will help you actually prepare, and it's been used by thousands of successful students. Also invite you to join me for a free consultation. We do one-on-one video coaching calls, and they're completely free and without obligation. It's an opportunity to talk about your studies and what you need to change to move from failure to the pass list. And then when you've done all that, we'll be ready for you with video number 4, and we'll come to you with that next video. And in video number 4, what we're going to be doing is looking at the value of positive experiences. And you might think, what possible difference can that make? I think you'll be surprised at how important the study found positive experiences in studying and working in the law to be. I hope that this has been helpful to you. Look forward to having you join us for all 6 of our videos on these 6 keys to passing and to moving to the pass list. Thanks for being with us, and we'll talk to you again in the next video.